in the 60s. I did the Selma Montgomery March. And I thought that was the most hatred I'd ever seen among American people. But Jason, I'm gonna tell you something.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Jason Conforti here, Never Settle Mindcast. Again, thanks for tuning in. I have a very special guest today, Neal Arthur. Not only is he a good personal friend of mine, he's also a father, family man, husband, grandfather, attorney, developer, politician, and he's got one hell of a story to tell. We're going to dive into a lot of things, touching on social events that are happening now and his connection to them going all the way back to the 60s. When we had that first wave of civil rights and social movements and social changes, and it's taken a long time, but I'm happy to see that the progress is picking back up. Without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Neal Arthur, let him start telling his story. How you doing, Neal?
Good, Jason. You know, I enjoy talking to you. You're one of my young men that I'm proud of. You're doing big and wonderful things, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming on, and like I said when I reached out, the timing couldn't, for me, timing's everything. And when I was lining up guests for the show and people I wanted to have on, I thought of you. Obviously, I thought of your daughter, Deanne, who she knows that she's going to be sitting in this hot seat too. But I just felt the timing, knowing how dynamic of an individual you are, the things you've accomplished in your life, where you've come from growing up as a youngster, which we'll get into, and then all of the different arenas you've touched on and the overlaps and similarities we have. In competitive nature and sports. I didn't do any of that bull riding, okay? But you know what I mean? It just made sense. I'm like, this is a guest I need to have on because people will find your perspective, especially now, will get more of the attention that it deserves on highlighting accomplishments and, you know, your views on things. So what's going on? Tell me this, you mentioned it briefly about when you're 6 years old and you're a grown man in New York. Give me some background on that, please.
You know, people don't really believe it when I say, if you grew up in New York City, you're a grown man at 6 years old. The world was different then than it is now, but it was pretty rough then. And I would ride the subway from Brooklyn down into Manhattan and out to Long Island. My mother thought I should go to a Christian school, and it was in Long Island. At 6 years old, that's what you do. I used to ride with my sister for a year or two. And then by the time I was 8, I was riding by myself. And I would, and I shouldn't tell this. My wife said, don't tell these stories about yourself. I'd skip school halftime. And then when I did go to school, I'd take off by midday. Because, you know, once you get some money in your pocket from delivering groceries in the neighborhood, you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I never really enjoyed school. First grade, I didn't enjoy it. The last day of law school, I didn't enjoy it. I managed to keep that from my own kids. And I remember my son, who was an excellent student and always was, he came home crying one day because he'd gotten a C. And he'd said that the teacher had said that he had not given his best effort. I knew better than that. The teacher had a problem with me, and he was crying. And I was sitting there staring at him, and I thought, if I got to see, my parents would have bought me a car. But he said, Dad, have you ever got to see? I said, son, I'm going to tell you the truth. I did. I've got to see her, too. I was pretty proud of that.
Oh, yeah.
But growing up in New York City, when I got to Los Angeles, my father was a doctor. We moved to Los Angeles when I was about 12, 14. And I asked the kids in the neighborhood, I said, well, how do you guys get out of the neighborhood? And they said, what do you mean get out of the neighborhood? I said, how do you, get downtown? And they said, my mom doesn't let me leave the neighborhood, doesn't let me leave the street. And I thought, oh, these kids are not going to be much fun.
Yeah.
But New York was an extreme situation for me. And I never wanted my kids to see a place like New York. So I raised them on a horse ranch here in Valley Center. And my son graduated from Santa Clara, and he called me, he said, Dad, I found the place I'm going to live the rest of my life. I just love it. And that's right. It was New York City.
He went back.
He went back. He never saw it until he loves it. I just couldn't understand it, but that's what it is. But anyway, enough of that.
No, but I have some comments on it. And we're going to shout out Neal too, because obviously he's his own juggernaut, right?
Yeah, he's doing good. He's doing real good.
I think part of the reason he felt probably home in New York is because of the connection probably to you, even though that you removed him from there. The way you carry yourself is very unique, and that's probably why he was shocked to learn that you have a C, because you sort of set the tone. When you're in a zone or in a space, you're immediately somebody that commands attention, and you're immediately somebody that commands respect, right? Like even when we're on the baseball field for intramurals, as informal as that setting could have been, you've always sort of cornered the attention in the room naturally, you know, and that's sort of a very unique characteristic that you have that I think probably rubbed off on him growing up, you know?
I appreciate you saying that, man, because that is a great compliment to me. When we talked about doing this podcast, I reflected on a lot of things, and I'm up in age now, and I'm looking at the latter part of my life. I reflected on a lot of things that I've done, and I've done some things that worked out. I've done some things that could have been done better, and I'm looking at the world today, and I look at the country that we live in. And I didn't grow up, but I was in school in Huntsville, Alabama in the 60s. I did the Selma Montgomery March. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the most hatred I'd ever seen among American people. But Jason, I'm gonna tell you something. Right now, I feel a sense of hatred, a division in this country like I have never felt before. Yeah. When I did the Selma Montgomery March, I was 18. And it was a great experience for me. Dr. King called all of the black colleges, and I attended Oakwood University, it's a historically black college, and he asked us to come. And our college said, if you go, we're going to put you out right away. And at 18, you take that as a challenge, like, oh, hell no, I'm going. Mm-hmm. And I went, and having been raised in New York City and Los Angeles, that was an experience that I never forget. But today, the world we live in today, and I have to say, Donald Trump, I think, is the great divide. People hate each other today worse than they hated each other in the 60s. We have gone backwards. Yeah. I appreciate the millennials that are in the movement, the Black Lives Movement, they call it now, because I think they have brought more attention to the Black Lives Movement. And a lot of my white friends who don't understand, and I get so perplexed by it, I don't try to talk to them about it, when they say Black Lives Matter, they're not saying white lives don't matter. Yeah. What we're saying is, stop shooting us. Mm-hmm. We're people too. Yeah. We're not doing anything. They say, well, why do you shoot each other? Blacks shoot each other. There are segments of what's going on in this nation today that need to be taken care of. But one of the things we have to stop and pay attention to is the lack of value that police departments put on black people, shooting black people in the back as they run away. They're not. And I'm a big supporter of the police department and police officers. I wouldn't take the job. I wouldn't chase 7-Eleven money down the dark alleys. I would stay in the alley and say, hey, you come back here. Yep. Not chasing anybody's money down in the alley. But a lot of policemen are great policemen. They do things in communities that people don't see. Yeah. It's the number of policemen that cause the problems. And people are being divided by that. And I think that's where we are today, that we haven't been in a long time.
Yeah, and, you know, I agree with you. Obviously, we have different perspectives, right? On a surface level, I didn't live through the 60s, right? And for you to live through that time in this country and to participate in such civil rights revolution and to be boots on the ground in that march, right? Selma to Montgomery. I can't say, oh, geez, I can say it looks worse than it was then, but I wasn't there. And so to hear that from you is, you know, sort of confirms the feelings that I feel now. And it's not unique to me. I have nothing but respect for police officers, and especially the good ones, right? One of my best friends, you know, God bless him, he's a police officer. One of my heroes, my uncle, he's a retired SWAT team sergeant, right, in the Bay Area. And they do things and deal with things on a daily basis that the average humans don't do and don't deal with. And that's why, I mean, and I had a post on this too, and I got a lot of shit from my law enforcement friends about a defund the police post when it comes to reallocation or reappropriating funds to make our officers better, because they deal with things and they don't have the tools to, to go through something traumatic at work, go home, shower, come back on your next shift and be able to respond as if nothing happened to your previous shift. That's sort of what they're left with now. And so that's why I did a post, because I want to see law enforcement get better. I want to see my friends who are officers and family members who are officers be safer and better equipped to help the communities that need the most help. But again, the worst thing for advancing a cause is a member of that cause. And what I mean by that is a police officer. The worst thing for the image of a police officer is a bad police officer. And a lot of times, instead of cleaning house, they do this blue line mentality, where they don't look inside their own departments, and they sort of point to the outside, commenting on their misbehavior as the problem with hatred towards police. And reality is, you can take that with any group, right? So whether it's Black lives, Hispanic lives, white lives, and you can break up any class of person, and usually the person holding that group back from being perceived the way they want is bad actors within that group that then leave a poor impression on other people, right? And are.
But Jason, the way I would deal with that, and as I said, I'm a supporter of the police department, the insane conversations about defunding police officers. At 3:00 in the morning, if somebody's rattling my door, I'm not calling a social worker. I'm not calling Reverend Al Sharpton. No. I'm calling my local police officer. And I'm not saying, please send me a brother who is committed to the cause. Send me a cop with a big gun to make this person go away. We need to spend more time talking about the good things they do.
Yeah.
Because the good ones are starting to feel like nobody loves me either. Mm-hmm. So the idea of defunding police departments is insane. Yeah. We need to spend more money on police officers, and then you get better police officers.
Yes.
And the people who have become the marginal police officers, they drop off because the job becomes of greater demand, and people really want to see police officers in their community. A lot of the things with racism today, and we've gotten off into that, and I know we didn't intend to, but a lot of things having to do with racism today, as it was in the 60s, we don't talk to each other.
No.
People look different. They don't assimilate. People live in their neighborhoods because they feel comfortable there. And then they decide, well, people in other neighborhoods don't look the way I am. Donald Trump's building a wall. I think that's insane. You can't build a wall. You can't build a wall. You have to go all the way to Canada. Yeah. And then all you're really doing is finding a way to get over the wall. Talk to each other. Let people know, I love you. You're different than me. Your kids are different. You never see children with racial hatred. Mm-mm. Your kids, my grandkids, came to the house. They played together.
Yep.
They have to be taught not to love each other. And we're doing that. We're doing that now. So, as I said, I didn't mean to get off on that. But the way I was raised, my parents told me, there's no big deal in being black. It's not great. It's not bad. You just go through. Now, I believe that racism is ingrained in our society as air. And there's going to be racism until we work it out. Mm-hmm. But I don't need the next generation to feel differently about each other. I have never felt like I was less or more than. And so consequently, I don't feel any racism. I don't dislike people, and I laugh at people who talk to me because I'm different than them. I had a guy in the government. I was in General Counsel's office, Federal Trade Commission. He asked me one day, he said, can I talk to you? And usually when a white guy walks up and says, can I talk to you? That's going to be some stupid shit. But that, and I was having one of those days, and he said, and in the course of the conversation, do you know your father? And I was having one of those days. And I just said, no, I don't know him. Now, he was at home when I left that morning, but, and he went on and told me that I should never try to compete with white people because I'm inherently inferior. And I just laughed at him, but I let him go on and continue in his thought process. Mm-hmm. There is no joy in being black, no joy in being white. It's a struggle in life for everybody. And as long as we can't get along, people who run things and the people who keep the spoils for themselves are going to keep us distracted and worrying about race while they take the things off that are important. I've been in a lot of boardrooms with more white people than anything else. They don't even like each other.
Yep.
But they have us believing that there's a reason that we can't treat you better. It's because all the black people are on welfare and take the money up. It's insane. And we have to pay attention to it. But I didn't mean to get into that.
No, I appreciate that you did, because it's something that a lot of people need to hear and people don't want to say. And, you know, the racial divide in the country is exponentially growing. And social media is to blame for that, because to me, the social media phenomena is great because, one, it can proliferate a message worldwide. Things can go viral. But it doesn't, the viral selector isn't good or bad thing. So you can spread a hateful, nasty message farther than you ever could back in the 60s with a click of a button or a quick video. The other thing that I see on the backside of that coin is people don't understand that they're being used by social media. They're being used to collect your data, and the tools and the algorithms know where you spend time on your newsfeed or what you click on or what you like. So then, to give you more of what you want, your worldview gets more reinforced and your scope gets more narrow, and you're constantly seeing things that you're clicking on a certain type of post, you're going to see more of that type of post. So we have this insular function of social media that people aren't even realizing what's going on and why they're seeing the same. They have 300 friends on Facebook, but they see only 25 people's stories. That doesn't mean the rest of you guys aren't doing anything. It's just you've been liking those stories more, so you're seeing more of those users. So when you have people being isolated in their community, sitting behind their computer or phone more, not interacting with people, and narrowing, so they're only really getting one perspective of view coming through their system, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that is just sort of a double-edged sword of social media that I think has gone further to spread the racial divide, and then this limiting belief of your own self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm seeing what I want to see and the other problems don't exist because I don't see them on my newsfeed. People need to break out of that, you know?
Well, you know, a lot of my friends cross the divide. I have friends of all nationalities, and that to me is a normal relationship. Mm-hmm. People who look at each other and say, I know what's wrong with you. I don't agree with how you live your life. You shoot each other, you're gang members and things. That's the insane part. People in every ethnic, of every ethnic background, they're the same. They're the same. You've got poor white trash people, as you got people living in the hood who they'd be better friends if they knew, because they would like each other more than they like us. And I just think that people need to spend more time. But the people who run things, you talked about media. I'm not going to say fake news, but the media does report. Like in Southeast San Diego here, they have a group called the 100 Young Men. Fine young fellas going to college. Yeah. You don't hear about anything that they're doing because they haven't shot anybody. They don't belong to gangs. And people read the newspaper and they say, these young black boys shot somebody. That's a story. The fact that the other 10 who were at home went to college, got degrees, did what they're supposed to do, one day be a lawyer with a podcast, we don't talk about them. We glorify those that cause the ruckus.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
No, yeah, absolutely is. If anyone from that group you want to connect me with, I'm happy to have them on here and talk about the good work they're doing in the communities.
I'd be glad to do that.
I'm happy to highlight them.
I'd be glad to do that. Fine young fellas.
You know, and it's being a lawyer, you know, just touching on that, I've been blessed with the opportunity. Like, I grew up in an inner city. I grew up in a very diverse group of people in neighborhood and playing sports and athletics. You know, I had friends of every race that lived in my area. I either went to school with them, played in the street with them, or was on one of my sports teams with them. You know, whether you're Asian, Pacific Islander, both Tongans and Samoans, and we had Hawaiians, and then we had almost every group of Asian descent represented in the Bay Area, from San Francisco down to the South Bay. It's a melting pot from any type of Asian background, from Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, Thai, Lao, right? They are all sort of encapsulated in the Bay Area, and we have a bunch of Hispanic overlap. So to me, that I grew up with that being normal, and I was able to see sort of the way the inner city operates. I wasn't living in an all-black neighborhood or an all-Mexican part of town, but I would frequently be in those parts of town, either hanging out with my friends.
And you're an athlete.
And I'm an athlete, so we connect with a lot of people get together on, you find common ground in sport, right? And then I've just fostered those relationships. But now as a professional dealing with criminal defense specifically, not everyone I represent is a white-collar criminal, right? Or a businessman who's subject to an SEC investigation. I love those cases, but I also deal with the average inner city problem that we deal with that leads to a fight or some gang enhancement or transnational crime dealing with the border. And I get to stay connected to those communities and help them and do my part through that client to try to highlight the good, either the tragedies that they've dealt with to help explain or mitigate how they ended up in the situation, but also highlight sort of the good things and community leaders that are trying to really focus on these at-risk youth and help them. But I'm thinking about if I didn't do that and I worked in some other type of field, how would I be connected? How would I have exposure to that? Because you're right, you don't get it on the news. You know what I mean?
Well, but you're being an athlete. You play with all kind of people, and the common ground is the sport that you're playing. Mm-hmm. If you were a person who was in a much narrower background, you'd be one of those lawyers who said, "Okay, here's this little kid with his pants hanging down. He's probably guilty. I'll go in and do the best I can, and then he'll pay me and I'll be done." But I know that you're a great lawyer. Deanne told me, my daughter told me that, she said, "Jason's an excellent lawyer. He commands the courtroom." That's the kind of stuff you do that makes you good for your clients. You don't worry about, well, he's probably a gang member. Mm-hmm. He's probably a problem in his community. I don't have to worry about it, and I'm off at 5 o'clock anyway. That's what we need. We need people to just say, and that, as I said earlier, the millennials who are in this Black Lives Matter movement right now, they are the ones that are bringing the real focus, because black people have been getting killed since I was born, way before I was born. And now we have people who are not looking like us out in the streets with us saying, "Oh no, this has got to stop." Now people are taking care of those movements. The thing that worries me is when the millennials stop being involved, when they decide that, okay, it's time for me to get a job and start running the streets and protesting, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You see, because we made a degree of progress, but we can always go back to where we were. I hope that won't be the case.
Do you have any suggestions on, ways that people can get involved or support these social movements, or organizations that you can give your time or money or whatever? Do you have any suggestions? Because I often hear people saying, "Oh, well, I want to do something, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how," and it's not that there's a protest every day, but I know there's other ways that people can get involved to support.
That's a good point,
social movement. Because
protest, that excludes a lot of people who say that's just thugs being thugs, mm-hmm. and that's not the case right now. We've had some windows broken and TVs taken and things like that. But for the most part, you have a major peaceful protest and you see people of all skin colors coming together.
Yeah.
I think the thing we need to do is put away our visual differences and start to say, okay, let's talk. Let's mm-hmm. talk to each other. Let's decide that the way we've been living is not working. We're ruining our future. Let's talk. And I think that you don't need to join an organization just to say, that person looks different from me. They are different than me, but I'm going to spend some time doing what they do.
Yeah.
I have friends who won't go into Southeast San Diego for fear that they'll be killed. It's nonsense. You go to Lakeside if you're white, go to Southeast San Diego if you're black. You don't need that. Live where you want to. As a developer, I've built houses throughout the county. And my whole thing is, don't worry about who your neighbors are. If you like the house, move into the house. You'll learn to like your neighbor. And for the most part, when I first came to San Diego, I came here intending to be here 6 months. But it's a place that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I've been here 40-something years. When I first came here, I would ask people where Rancho Bernardo was, and they, oh, you don't want to go there. What they meant was there's no black people living in Rancho Bernardo.
Yeah.
Now it's a population. We need to say, I'm going to take down the barriers. I'm going to take down my preconceived ideas about you and see who you really are.
Yeah.
And people are doing that now. When I first came here, there were codes that said you can't, if you're black, you can't live in Rancho Santa Fe. They did that. Paul Silas, the Clippers coach, was the first black person that I remember who lived in Rancho Santa Fe. It's not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. Just say, hey, how you doing, neighbor? I lived in Valley Center, and my wife said, when she came home from the grocery store, she said, you know what was strange? She said, the man in the grocery store said that my husband was just in here. Well, we're the only black couple in the area. But it was a great place for my kids to grow up. Mm-hmm. We had neighbors that were involved in the community. My kids were treated like everybody else, and they have common relationships today. But that's because we weren't threatened, they weren't threatened, everybody got along.
Well, you know, you got to give yourself some credit there, Neal. And that's one thing I was actually telling Patrick over here before you came here. You have such a huge part in shaping the success that your kids are enjoying, right? Through being decent, first and foremost, good people, right? And then you drill down further, they're professionals, they're excelling in their fields, they're both gone to higher education, college, postgraduate work, lawyer, you know, marketing mogul, right? And Neal, it's just, you have to take credit because you say, oh, they weren't fearful, they weren't threatened. Well, you weren't instilling in your house, oh no, you better fear the white man outside, don't play with those kids. You know what I mean? And you have a huge part in that.
Well, Jason, I will tell you this. I appreciate you saying that, and I am very proud of my children. I remember when little Neal first came home and I sent him to a private school. He came home and I said, how'd the first day go? And he was a little disappointed. He said, the teacher's not teaching me what I came to learn. I'm learning to read. I want to learn to read and write. And she's talking about this is the color brown, this is a brick. This. He said, I don't need that. I already know what that is. So then to dissuade what you said is good about me, I said, how many black kids are in your class? And he looked at me, and he was 6, and he said, what do you mean? How many black kids in my class? He said, I don't know. I don't know what I am. I'm not there to worry about how many black kids are in my class. And so then I said, well, I'm going to teach him now the lesson in life. And I said, well, sometimes, son, people who are white, people who are black don't get along. And I went through that thing about, and he looked at me again like, you are the dumbest. He said, let me tell you something. Nobody's going to work harder than me. I don't care what color you are. I'm going to work harder than anybody else, and I'm going to do better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if I'm black or they're white or whatever. And I said, okay, good story. And that was a lesson learned for him to me. Mm-hmm. And he's that way today. He does well. He's in New York. He loves living in New York. He runs a large company. But we don't get into that. Who's black or white? That's a burden that you don't need to carry. And he taught me that. If you walk around worrying about if people like you because you're black or don't like you because you're black or white or whatever, that's something you don't need to take on. And the first thing you can do is, we said earlier, what can you join? Just join your neighbor. You know, just take on the idea that I'm going to show people I'm just like you. You're just like me. We can all worry about black people being shot in the back by policemen because you never know when it's going to be you.
No, it's true. And yeah, it's funny. As a dad, and I still consider myself a new dad, right? Like
yeah, you are. You're a new dad.
6 and 2.
Yeah.
It feels like forever, but they're 6 and 2. I used to have hair. And but they do teach us so much. Like the way sometimes when I come home too, I'm focused on something else, but I'm present with my kids physically, but my mind's somewhere else. I'm still pissed off from something at work. And sometimes I say things and I don't really understand what I've just said or like how I've said it. And I get these looks, like this quandary on their face. Like my boy Luca's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I have to realize like, oh, geez, like I've been telling him it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And look what I just did, you know? So it's crazy how much the kids teach us, and I think that's really powerful. And one more kid story I wanted, before we move on from that, is at your grandson's birthday party, right? Like one thing, my boy was over there playing, he was doing something. I really honestly don't remember what he was doing, but it was something, he was going to be a garbage man or he was going to be a chef or something. And you said something to me that I still remember was cracking me up. You're like, no, you need to cut that out right now. Like, you need to tell him, stop that. There's no way your parents worked this hard. Your mom, your dad are both lawyers, and you're just going to grow up and you're just going to be that. Like, you need to get that out of his head right now. And it wasn't being rude or disrespectful or anything, but to me, I was like, no, it starts now. Like, how you shape your kids' expectations and ideas and what they can become. Like, I'm so conscious, and I know I read more than most about this topic of my friends that I know, but talking about success and limiting beliefs and the psychology that goes into breaking free from those sometimes chains we put on ourselves because of what we've been told or what we've seen, or we feel we're tied to our past and we can't do better than that because of where we come from. And to be able to mentally say, no, get rid of that bullshit. Let's pump up the positive and say sky's the limit, right? To me, stuck with me. And I was like, holy shit, Neal's right.
I hope so, man. Not that there's anything wrong being a garbage man. Somebody has to pick that garbage up.
Yeah.
But life is easier and better when you control your dynamic, when you control what life you live. If you want to go to law school and then become a garbage man, good for you.
Yeah.
But you have a choice now.
Yeah. And that's what I took from it, is you want to get yourself to the platform where you have options and you're choosing a path or a profession because you chose it, not because that's the one that was left for me because I didn't do my
what I was telling you earlier about I don't get into racism and things like that. It's because my parents gave me an opportunity to go and do more things and better things. And I feel as though, you know what, your feeling about me, your assessment of me means nothing. Means nothing at all. I don't care what you feel about me. Black people don't like me. I ran for office and they told me that they didn't like me. They let me know. I won't do that again. But you have to have that self-esteem. And if I've done anything for my kids, I think I've given them good self-esteem. And I always tell them, don't let anybody assess you. Don't let anybody tell you. Because I can't tell you how many times when I was graduating from this private high school my parents sent me to, the guidance counselor told me that I ought to go to a junior college, and that's the extent of my ability. He said, you just don't have it. And I laughed. I didn't even take him seriously. I knew I was going to a 4-year college. I knew my parents would kill me if I didn't. And I didn't even take on his assessment of me in any way. And I don't do it today. And my wife says I'm arrogant, but it's not that. I can't trust you to determine whether I'm a good person or a bad person.
No, it's true. And a lot of times self-confidence is most of the time misperceived for arrogance because you have such a strong belief and conviction in yourself. And my retort to people who challenge that is, why are you going to let how you feel about yourself be determined by somebody else?
That's exactly right.
They're
That's
not going to
exactly
pay
right.
your bills for you. They're not going to build your life. They're not going to create your house. Like, so why are you going to limit your self-worth to some other person, jerk, asshole, nice person, who cares opinion? You know, I'm fine with people thinking I'm cocky and I'm arrogant because of how confident I know I am in myself, because it goes back to my work ethic, whether it's in
That's
law.
why you control the courtroom.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, but it's really like, shit, if I'm going to get up every day and say, oh, well, I'm not going to be shit today because someone thought I was arrogant, so I'm going to stay in bed, blanket over my head.
But they
and
don't
stuff
love
like
you.
that.
They don't love you.
No, they don't care.
That's exactly right.
You know, and so that's why I try to get that message across to where they don't care about you, so why should their opinion matter? Right?
And your kids, they're 2 and 6. But now is the time to start teaching, because people who don't love them are going to impact their lives, starting in the 1st grade and going all the way through. So
That's true.
I'm a firm believer in that.
No, and people need more of that. And people need to be comfortable. And it goes back. And, you know, race, the purpose of this talk was not to talk about racism, but we can't ignore what's going on, right? And one of the things that people need to understand is being confident in yourself will go a long way in building relationships with the people around you, because people who are not confident or are insecure in their place then feel attacked when they have conversations with differing views. And instead of treating it as a conversation and giving mutual respect, it's not this net zero outcome of like, wait a minute, if I give you something, then I'm giving up something, when that's not necessarily the dynamic when we're talking about different perspectives. And that's why I think sometimes that'll go a long way in building conversations and listening to understand as opposed to listening to react or respond.
You know, when we started this, you talked about having me talk about my background. And years ago, I was the director of government affairs for Youre Industry. And I thought I was doing a good job, and I thought I was wonderful. And one day, the president of the company, he and I became good friends, and he said, I'll tell you something. He said, we interviewed black lawyers, just black lawyers, because we had a program we had to apply for with the federal government, and we needed minorities. Mm-hmm. And so we picked you. He said, we didn't care if you even came to work. We just needed to have your name, your race on a form. I had figured that out. And they didn't have anything for me to do. I had a nice desk and a secretary and an office and all that stuff. But I figured out that they didn't care if I came to work. They didn't have any expectations of me at all other than be black. So I just started using their money and going to Sacramento. And that's how I became director of government affairs, because I became Jerry Brown's guy. Mm-hmm. And I knew I had expectations of myself. Yeah. They had no expectations of me, and I didn't care. So I spent weeks going to Sacramento, running around up there, becoming friends. And then when the company started getting involved in healthcare, they were shocked that I knew the governor well enough to bring him down for a meeting, and they couldn't believe it. I didn't wait for them to have expectations of me. I had expectations of me going in, and that's what you do. That's what I think is clear for black people, brown people, white people.
Yeah, no, you got to set the bar high for yourself, and you got to do it for you, whether or not you're getting, and another talk that I had on here with my friend Legadoo talking about athletics and getting to that level and being a professional is you got to hold yourself accountable, because if you wait to get that positive feedback from a coach or some outsider to start really caring or focusing, you're too late.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And there's a lot of overlap in just life lessons from getting to that level of success, whether it's in business, law, political relations, athletics, right? It's just there's same personality traits and there's building blocks for people who when you meet them, like, oh, this kid or this man, this woman, they got something, right? And I think that's something that I just want to point out to the people listening to this to take away. Like, that's a powerful lesson that they can implement in their life right now to be better. And if you're better, everything around you gets better. Your lives get better, your relationships get better, everything gets better.
Well, if my parents gave me anything, and they were great parents, I had an excellent childhood, they gave me that idea that you are what you make yourself, and never let anybody assess you. And it was never an issue for me. So as I say, when the guidance counselor in high school told me to go to junior college, and that's as far as I could go, I just chuckled. I knew that my parents were going to not put up with that.
Yeah.
And I have to admit also, when I got out of college, I didn't know what I was going to do then. And they said, well, you're going to do something because you're going to need more than a 4-year degree. And I applied to law school, and I got into Howard University. And when I got out of that, I said, I don't want to be a lawyer. And my mentor, and my background has been shaped by my mentors, some people in this town who I greatly appreciate, Tafik Corey and Jason Corey, who own and run Pacific Scene. On Pacific Scene. Great people. Tafik Corey came here, not as an immigrant, but not American born and bred, raised a huge development company, raised kids, did very, very well. Barry McCormick, who, white man from Tennessee, built Rancho Bernardo. He was the volunteer president of the United Negro College Fund here. He took me under his wing and taught me everything I know about real estate. There are a lot of people in this town. Leon Williams, who was the first black city councilman, the first black member of the Board of Supervisors, a brilliant man. Mm-hmm. And the thing I know about Leon is he's very humble. He's not like you and me with their degree of arrogance. He just sits and quietly lets people have their thought process. Then he goes on with it. He's done a tremendous amount for this community. And as I say, I have got people in my life who have shaped me and done wonderful things for me. And those are just a few. Susan Golding was the mayor. She made me chairman of the Housing Commission. And that was something that I appreciated because as a real estate developer, I had the chance to also get involved in affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And that means a lot to me now because San Diego is a place where people can't live.
Yeah.
And if you're going to live here, you got to have some place to live. And that gave me a chance to make speeches and develop affordable housing that will make people have a chance to live. Saul Price, another brilliant man. I helped Saul build City Heights. I bought a lot of the property up there. So there are a lot of good people in this world you come across that will shape you and have you determine who you're going to be. And if you know how to work with them, I give them a lot of credit for whatever I am today.
No, mentorship's important. You know,
it is.
It's a necessary step in leveling up, bettering yourself, and then improving your business, profession, whatever. You have to rely on the people who have come before you to foster those relationships, to learn, impart wisdom, and to help you learn things without having to touch the stove yourself.
You know, you talked about joining, and I said, don't need to join anything. But given who you are, Jason, an athlete, a father, outstanding lawyer, a host of a podcast, you have kids of your own that take your time. But if you have any extra time, and I know you don't, if you have any inclination, just take on the role of a mentor for some other young person coming up. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be some poor little gang member, just a person coming up who could use the benefit of your experience and shape them in your image. And then that's one less racist person that you're going to deal with. Somebody who's going to understand how to deal with life, because Mr. Conforti shaped me, helped me, taught me. A lot of kids don't have that opportunity. Their parents can't do that for them. Just spending some time with a person like you will make them understand what sports means, what it's like to be a father and a husband, what it's like to go to law school and become a lawyer. You can go to law school and become anything you want to. Half the lawyers don't practice law.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, as I said, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a developer. Barry McCormick came and said to me, yeah, you can work for me. And 40 years ago, I left. I used to run the office, legal aid office in Southeast San Diego. But the joy I had in being a developer is affordable housing, market rate housing, applying, getting people to come to work. I love it. Now I'm doing something different. I'm selling real estate. I got to the point where I got so sick and tired of banks telling me, oh, well, you have to reapply, you have to do, or clients telling me, like I recently had a health facility tell me, Neal, yeah, we're going to let you build this for us. It's going to be 2 stories. And then next meeting, oh, no, Neal, 1 story. And after a while, all the money I'd spent on architects and engineers and things, I said, I'm done with this. Mm-hmm. And now I'm selling real estate, and I'm enjoying that tremendously. Because when I ran for office in Southeast San Diego, I used to go door to door. And I began to realize people have a car and the house they live in. Sometimes they own the house, sometimes they don't. Young people like you, we need to put away money for the future. Yeah. We don't do that good now. The best investment you can make is in real estate.
Absolutely.
And people drive a car they can't afford, live in a house they can't afford, and it doesn't work out. I am now teaching younger people, how to invest. I'm talking about groups, athletes, ball players. I've represented some ball players, and they would spend their money, $50,000 on a chain. I'm explaining to them now, oh, no. When your career is over, I want you to own several apartment units. I want you to own the house you live in. It doesn't need to cost $13 million. It can cost $6 million, and you still have a badass house. Mm-hmm. And people are starting to understand. I play golf with guys all the time who say, I never thought of that. So I'm not a realtor with the sticky signs on the side of my car. I never wanted to be that. But I am helping people find a way to put away money for the future so that their future is something they can look forward to.
No, that's important.
I
was going to ask you, what's going on now? What are you doing next? You jumped right into it. And I think that's something that I think maybe, again, it's a product of my social media consumption. I think is becoming more pressing, more prevalent. People talking about saving and trying to get a profit, generating property, like a true asset. Perhaps the idea of buying a duplex, living in one, renting one out, so you get some monthly cash flow, and every time you got to pay that mortgage bill at the end of the month. Just flip the script on that and understand that that's you, that whatever chunk of money it is, $300, $500, $600, thousands of dollars, whatever your mortgage is, you're paying yourself, because at the end, you're going to own that.
But Jason, you'd be amazed at how many people don't think that way because they don't know how to think that way. And that's what I think I'm doing now. I'm selling them property, but I'm explaining to them what the future is, what they ought to be doing, why this house shouldn't cost $500,000. It could cost $300,000. It could be your first house. You keep it. It's an investment for you. It's an income piece of property. It's passive income. Mm-hmm. And as you get into your late 30s, your 40s, and 50s, you will have other properties. People just don't understand that. And I never knew that until I started going door to door and recognizing people say, well, I own my own home. I own my car. But that's not enough.
Yeah.
And young people, especially, and they've got student loans and things like that, you got to sit and talk to them about it. Oh, yeah.
The loans are nuts. Someone's going to wipe those out one day. But it blows my mind because there are places in downtown, like luxury apartments, if you will, or condo units, where I see these young, I consider them to be young kids to me, and I'm not that old, but they're in their 20s, early 20s, like 20 to 24. 25, spending, there may be a group of them, but they're spending between like $500 and $6,800 a month on rent. And they're not saving anything. They have a car payment that's on something that, even if you own the car, it's a depreciating asset. I'm thinking to myself, how much money are you making? And are you really making enough to where you'll be able to save and actually get ahead? Or are you just living for the gram, right? Are you living for that picture or that view to tell your friends you're in this building? But it's sort of crazy to me because I'm wondering, like, what's the move from there? How are you going to make it? Are you going to have, because if you're that tied up into image, are you going to be able to take a step back and really move into something you can afford to then
That's
buy?
the key word, Jason, the image. It's important for me to show you what I've got. Now, all I've got is what I can show you. It's for me at this point in time to teach them, don't pay attention to that image, because you're not going to get anywhere with that. Car, depreciating asset. And most people don't own their own homes in their 20s. I met a young girl this weekend. I've known her for a while, but we sold her apartment, her condo for her, and helped her buy a fourplex. And now she's looking for another fourplex, and she's looking to buy her own home because she doesn't care about image. She cares about the future. Mm-hmm. And it's people like that I really enjoy working with. That's why I can say I actually enjoy selling real estate now, because it's not just selling homes. It's working with young people. It's working with senior citizens. It's working with people who are saying, I never knew, now I know. And now I'm going to do things differently. I feel good about that.
Oh, I can tell. I mean, it comes across just in the excitement in your voice. The pace picks up. You getting that grin on your face, Butch is coming out. But it's, that's something to me that's huge in giving a little insight to the listeners to understand that you've done a lot of things, you've made a lot of money, and you've done it in different areas. But to see the pure joy and to see that it's not the short-sighted real estate view of, I just got to close this extra to make a commission. It's about building a relationship with somebody that is going to be worth way more than one commission, because you're going to see them elevate their life, and then they're going to follow the path that's going to ultimately lead to more business. But it starts with the true care and concern of fostering a relationship and bettering somebody.
That's what you just said, Jason. It's so important. Fostering somebody, caring about somebody. You went to law school to become a lawyer, to make money, but you, Jason, the kind of lawyer you are, you do it with a calling in your heart to say, I'm going to level the playing field for this person. I'm not going to let them go through the system. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make their life better. Now they're going to pay you, but I believe, Jason, knowing you as I do, you do it for half the money because you care about people. And that's one of the things that I am enjoying right now. I've done a lot of things that I cared about. But to see people's lives change, young people's lives change, to see me teach them a little bit, to see them pay attention to their future makes life worth it to me now. I mean, I really enjoy that, because these young people just don't know what I'm teaching them now.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying I'm going to do affordable housing for the rest of my life, but just to teach people that their life could be better if they pay attention and focus. Makes me happy.
And that's awesome, and it's something that people need. You don't need the bullshit that people are trying to sell you that you're not even going to wear next year because it's out of fashion.
Oh,
you
that's exactly right.
And like you looking at me right now, all you people out there, look, I'll admit it. I'm an idiot. I spend too much money on shoes. I like shoes. It's a dumb investment, but I didn't spend money on shoes before I had money to spend on shoes. That's the difference.
Your kids are not starving because of your shoes.
No, and the shoes I wear to work, when I try to dress half as well as Mr. Neal over here, those shoes make me money because it's, again, part of the appearance. You've seen my other videos that I have talking about why it's important that I dress well because of the standard I hold myself to and the spillover representation it has to not only my client's perception of me, but to everyone else's perception of my client's case. But the point is really you have to focus on you. You have to put yourself and your future first, and you have to take stock of your house. And people think they don't have money. You'll be amazed at how much money you have when you actually look at where it's going. And you spend, oh, I don't need this, I don't need that. And then you realize you could have a lump of $200, $300, $400, $500 a month that you waste on things you don't truly need that could then pay your future and make you money passively going forward, right?
Well, that's right, Jay. And we're kidding each other about how you dress and stuff. But I've seen you when you're ready to go to court and stuff. You're hooked up. But the young people you're talking to, the older people, when you talk to them, if you're sitting around in that $29 suit and then run over shoes, they're going to say, I'm not following this guy's advice because if he knew what he was talking about, he wouldn't look like that. Yeah. So when you say, I spend money on shoes, you've worked hard to get where you are. That's your toy. Your suits, your shoes, your car, your clothes, your house, all those things are part of your image.
That's true.
And your image is the first thing I see when I come and talk to you. And you're going to talk to me and you are not making it. So you have to remember, God has made me who I am today. I've come from where I came from in San Francisco, through sports, through education, and now I'm in a position to help other people. They're not going to let you help them unless you look like what their image of a success is.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's 100%. And I've tried to articulate that point because why are they going to put their faith in me with their life or their freedom if I don't fit the image of someone they perceive to be successful or what they think a lawyer should look like, a lawyer that can really help them, right? Not just someone's going to push their case along and doesn't give a shit.
That's exactly right, because when you come to court and you have that look that says, I'm struggling, your clients don't. When I ran legal services in Southeast, one of the things I used to have to deal with my lawyers about was come to court looking like a lawyer. And they would say things to me like, well, what difference does it make if I know the law? Because people don't want to be represented by some hippie, and you have got to recognize that just because you work for legal services does not mean you can just come here acting any way you want. And they would say, oh, that doesn't mean anything at all. I had to make the lawyers in the office come up with the idea that, no, that one coat that you hang up in the closet upstairs is not going to be what you wear to court every day. One guy said, well, I need my good shoes for Saturday night. I said, well, if you get fired, you're going to have anywhere to go on Saturday night anyway. and so you have to change their thinking. Their clients don't want, and they would say to me, well, my clients don't want me to look way better than them. Oh, you're wrong. Your clients want you to look way better than them. They want to be what they aspire to be when they get to be like you.
Yeah. And
if you have nothing to show them, they're not. And the judge looks, everybody sees, and you look like you're struggling and dying, not gonna work.
Yeah, no, it's true, and it's another one of those harsh realities that people can try to take sound bites out of context and make it seem like, you have to understand the way the real world works and the way perception works in business, especially in court, in law. Jurors pay attention to the craziest shit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the craziest shit. The comments I get after trial, they blow my mind every time. But you can't think like, oh, wait a minute, they're going to be focusing on that.
But that's what they do.
Right?
That's what they do. They judge you. And they judge your case, unfortunately, by how you look. And if he's a successful lawyer, he wouldn't look like he looks.
Yeah.
So you have to come in. And it's part of your persona.
Yeah. It's your
And
uniform.
that's exactly when you walk into a bank and say, I want to borrow X number of millions of dollars, they look you up and down. They figure, okay, if this guy can't buy a suit, how's he gonna pay me my millions of dollars back?
Absolutely. And that is 100% fact that people need to take to the bank with them. And they should take stock about how they go to work, because there's this sort of hippie style laissez-faire mentality of like, people like me for me, not because of what I wear. And you know what? Sometimes that may be true, but people don't even get to know you if they shut you down based on appearance, because they don't get that meeting with you. They don't take that interview with you because they're not. You present yourself in a way that where people who are looking at efficiency and time and like, I'm not going to waste my time on this interview because they don't look like they care enough, or they don't look like, you don't present yourself in a way that's caring, compassionate, knowledgeable, whatever. You don't even get behind door number one. And
That's
so
exactly
they're limiting
right.
their life. Like,
Exactly right.
even those people who have that mentality and are true believers, you point out the fact that, well, how many opportunities have you missed because the door didn't even open for you or shut before you realized it was there because of the way you presented yourself and the way people read your laid-back atmosphere.
But that's what I was saying earlier, when you, Jason Conforti, can impact people, young men who need to know what you know, young men who need to dress like you do. Now, you have a wife who's a lawyer. That helps too, as opposed to having some non-lawyer wife. How's that? Because I don't want people calling in the show and saying, hey, but you guys do good. And that's because you planned it. You didn't marry her because she was a great waitress. You picked the woman that was at your level, and we're probably going to get some kickback on that. But you did good. And so now you guys are enjoying the benefit of the relationship you have, and your kids are not going to become garbage men.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to want to live like that.
No, I've told my son repeatedly, because he knows today's a big day for him. Today's Wednesday. The blue garbage trucks are all over our neighborhood on Wednesdays, some on Tuesdays, mostly Wednesdays. So I impress upon him that he should get to know where they go and when he run a garbage company, because some of my favorite clients are in waste disposal or utility service type companies. And until I got into it, I just didn't think about the upside or the life you can lead running a company like that, because people are never going to stop pooping. They're never going to stop having trash. And so I've shifted his focus there.
Well,
and so
that's
now
right.
He keeps track of like the green trucks, the white and blue trucks, the white and red trucks. And
Well, see, but you told me he could own his own. And life is better when you own your own.
oh yeah,
Because one of the worst things that I used to hear when I was working for people, we want to do your year-end evaluation. That goes back to what I said. I don't want you assessing me, and I had a hard time with that. So when I got into my own, I'd rather have my own business and make no money than work for you and make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And then one day when you're going to say to me, Neal, we've appreciated all you've done for us. We're going to let you go. I'm not going to live like that. So your son, he's right. He's going to be a garbage man, going to run his own company.
Yep. And not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur.
Do you ever think about working for somebody in a law firm, working on the ticket of somebody else? Can't do it, can you?
It would have to be. I don't know if that position exists, but it would basically have to be the perfect criteria of mentors or people I wanted to work with. The money and compensation would have to be right. But then at the end of the day, what it comes down to is I'd have to basically be on my own island within that firm, basically doing my own thing like I'm doing now with some additional benefit. And I haven't found that. I'm meant to.
That's your personality,
Yeah,
Jason.
I'm meant to have my shop, have my freedom, build those relationships. And I've been fortunate to build relationships with people in these mega firms that, guess what, when I represent a company, I hire them for certain pieces and parts of the puzzle, and we work well together. But closing my eyes at night and seeing myself in-house at one of those places, there's certain things that be like, oh, I don't have to think about this, and the money's great, but when you take the totality of it, I can't see it.
Well, that's what goes back to what we were saying. They assess you. At some point in time, they assess you, and then one day they'll say, Jason, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to shut down your department. They're going to say to you, your son has a baseball game, but we need you to be in Chicago. If you're working for yourself, you're going to that baseball game.
100%.
You see? But you have to ask some man, can I go? And that's just not you anymore.
Well, no, and Neal, to be honest with you, you're right, but even if I work with somebody else, I'm still going to the baseball game.
Well, then
and that's going to be the
Yeah,
problem.
but that's
you know
what they're
what I
going to
mean?
have to let you go. That's exactly
So
right.
I won't be in Chicago, and I probably won't be in work the next day because of, but I get 100% what you're saying because of there's a certain level of freedom and joy and life by design that when you have control, it's huge risk, and you're not guaranteed things when you run your own shop. But when you have the ability to stand on your 2 feet with a backbone and know that I'm going to take on these battles because of the benefit of flexibility and the family time you get, to me, that's much more of a fulfilling life.
Yeah,
right?
because when you're in one of those law firms, and we talked about you owning a courtroom, and I said to you as your senior partner, Jason, kind of calm that down, or we don't like your wife, and we're not going to make you a partner. You see, you don't want to live like that.
No.
Half the money.
Mm-hmm. Because then I get more time, and I get the kids.
Well, you get to be your own
experience.
man.
Exactly. And Jerissa and I talk a lot, right? She's a boss, she's a lawyer, and she's in a firm environment. And, she excels in there, she does well. And sometimes, when we're talking, it becomes very clear to me because there's certain things that I can issue spot with the best of them from outside and say, no, that's bullshit. We're not doing that. Here's what needs to happen. But then it quickly runs afoul of the sort of red tape firm politics as to how things can be presented. And I just realized I'm not meant for these little boxes because I'll come in there like a fucking wrecking ball. And then when the wolf's loose in the office, you're not controlling him. It's a matter of let's get him out of here with the least amount of casualties because I've been blessed with this big mouth and a sharp tongue, and it's not to hurt your feelings. But if I see bullshit and you can't back up as to why, and perhaps I've misperceived it, but if it's true bullshit and I tell you it's bullshit, you can't wiggle out of that.
Well, that's probably why you work longer hours for yourself. And being your own man really is worth more than money.
Yeah.
It really is, because you can make your own decisions. You can make your own politics. If the firm decides that they're going to support Donald Trump and you decide you're going to support Joseph Biden, that's a good feeling to say, I'm going to say it. And if you guys don't like it, I'm going to go back to being what I was before. I pay my rent. I pay my employees. I do it all. And I can be the man I said I wanted to be.
Yeah.
That's one of the things in my life, I have always felt that way. I have worked, I've had salaries, but I never was the guy who was good at it, And every time I left and went somewhere else where I was running my own, I felt so much better.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was with one company, I was in the contracts department, and they were deciding that they may lay the contracts department off, or they may cut some of them. And I said, wait, guys, they need us. We are integral to the company. Let's just contract with them. Let's just form our own group. And they all said, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm vested. I've got a retirement. Oh, no. I said, you have no security? These people are going to let you go. That's not security. Oh, no. And then I began to realize I'm different than they are. Leave them alone. Don't stress them. And I left, and come to find out later they came to me. But that's what you have to be. You have to say, as we talked about, having this self-esteem. Mm-hmm. I can do this. You obviously are a good lawyer. You've proven that. But if you were at a point in time now where you're saying, 9 to 5 is pretty good because I don't work that hard and I'm not that good of a lawyer, then the 9 to 5 is good for you.
Yeah.
Keep it there for you.
Yeah. No, I'm very thankful for the life that I have, that I'm building, still
that
building,
you built.
And I know I'm just getting started. And on the tough days where you're putting in the long hours or things don't go perfect every day, I always try to focus on the gratitude and look at how far I've come and the building that we've done and where it's going to go, in that trading that for the false security of a guaranteed paycheck.
Well, you couldn't do this if you were in a firm. They wouldn't let you.
No.
You'd have to ask somebody. And that's the thing. Little Neal, he runs a big company, and he has a position on Black Lives Matter. But his attitude is, I am who I am, and I built this. And they said to him, we're not so sure. And he said, don't worry, I'm going to do it anyway, whether y'all want me to or not. And I'm proud of him for that. Now, he could, be out on the street, but he doesn't care about being out on the street. That's not what makes him afraid. The thing that makes him afraid is being owned by another man.
Yeah.
we're off on another subject altogether. But I feel strongly about that.
Yeah, no, and it's important, and it's important for people to understand that just because you're growing up and being told you need to get a job doesn't mean you have to get a job for somebody else. Like, if you have the skill set, the mindset, and the mental strength to focus on yourself, and you can make something of yourself, that is not a less than the person who has the stable paycheck, because although you may work harder at the
It's
beginning,
not stable. It's not stable.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's not, because when they want to turn that switch off, they'll turn it off. So it's stable when it's on, but it's not up to your control. And so, but I think a lot of people are dissuaded from becoming entrepreneurs or business owners because it's seen as like the easy way, or you don't want to work for someone else. And I think it's something that people need to understand. The world needs more creative thinkers. The world needs more outside the box type thought, where we don't need people going to the big box shops and doing it the same way it's always been done. That's not how things change, or things get better, or things improve. And so I hope that people are willing to take a chance on themselves, because guess what? If you fail, you can always go work for somebody else later.
Well, this thing I'm finding out about real estate is they have me come into the office and they say, all right, everybody look in the mirror and say to yourself, I'm going to be the best I can be. And then everybody do this, and everybody, hold up, 80% of y'all are failing anyway. Mm-hmm. So why am I going to do what you all are already doing? What you're doing is not working. And they say, well, Neal, you're different. I'm different, and I'm trying to tell them to be different. Let's all be different. And I enjoy what I'm doing because it's my hours, it's my risk, it's my, and I'm an ethical person. I mean, I really believe in that. And I can tell a person, no, this house is not for you.
Yeah.
It's a good deal for me, but it's not good for you. And I enjoy that. I had a house, doing open house, and this lady had about 10 kids living with her, grandkids and stuff. And they had 3 bedrooms, and they were going to add on and do stuff, and they had horses. And I said, no, this is not for you. That road it has a big dip in it. You can't pull horses through that. And adding on, you could buy a house cheaper than this, but when you add on. And they listened to me for a while, and they went and said, you're right. And I felt good about me for talking her out of making a mistake. That's what I enjoy about selling real estate. You and Jarissa have 2 kids. You might have 6 kids before it's over. You need a big house, and you're planning on having 6. Well, let's talk about that. You don't need to be buying this house. And if I can talk you out of it or talk you into it, I feel good about me.
Yeah, no, and it comes down to valuing the person, the relationship, and being honest. And in my career too, people most often shy away from the tough conversation, honest conversations. In my line of work, that people really need to hear. Like, if you tell your client what they want to hear every time, you're not getting progress on the case, and that case always ends the same way, with the client going back saying, my lawyer fucked me. And for you in real estate, in that example specifically, it's clear that your financial interests are best suited by pushing through a deal, and you tell them that, and you show them why it's a bad deal for them. That's what gains the trust in the relationship, that Neal cares about me. Neal cares about helping me. Neal doesn't just care about closing the deal and making money, because this one was a better price point for him. But look, he made us think about things we didn't consider. And that goes back to you being a problem solver, a lawyer, a businessman, and having ethics of wanting them to truly be happy, right? And valuing people over the money. And I think that's important.
Well, first of all, they'll make referrals to me. But that's not the key thing to me. The key thing to me is, having met me, their life has been made better. Mm-hmm. Because, there's a lot of things you can do in life. But if you can just have somebody feel better about you and better about themselves, and having met you, that's your purpose. I mean, you could be a great lawyer and get all these little criminals off, but they're going to be criminals, mm-hmm. and they're going to continue to do what they do. And they have not been made better by you as if you pled them out. But that's the thing about you, Jason, is that a law firm may not be the spot for you, because they're going to say, well, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this client, or we're not going to go this defense. Your senior person has decided we're going to go this way, and that's not going to be good for the client, but it'll work for us. You don't have to go through all that.
No.
And that makes it easy to sleep at night, doesn't it?
A hell of a lot easier, knowing that I care about my clients, and that I have control over the way that I help them, and hopefully give them the tools to recognize, to avoid those bad situations in the future. Because in my business, I really don't like repeat business from clients. I want to see people get out of the system. You know, I want repeat business from them saying, this dude changed my life. He helped me, gave me a second chance. You should deal with him.
Do you, I shouldn't say don't you, do you ever get a chance to kind of keep a relationship going with people who have offended?
Yeah.
See, that is better than joining an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you join an organization, you're doing what the organization says, and it doesn't always work. A lot of this Black Lives Money Matter, people keep talking about that, goes straight to the Democratic Party. That's not why I give money to the Black Lives group. I want Black lives to function on their own and to do a good job. If I want to give to the Democratic Party, I'll give to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But in your line of work, you come across kids who have made mistakes, who have had a bad upbringing, and meeting Mr. Conforti can change their lives drastically. And you don't get repeat business, but look what you've done for them.
Exactly. And it's much better. It's much more than any check or payment they give me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know, I've been fortunate. I have a number of success stories, if you will, and I don't rub it in the DA's face, right? But I've had a number of clients who made a bad choice, were in a bad decision, but their life was so much more than that one night. And you fight like hell, and you get them the just outcome, and you kick them in the shins until they kick their supervisors, and you get them a chance at a deferred or some sort of earned down to a misdemeanor so you don't ruin this person's life. And then they become a wild success, and not only do they change their life, they're changing in people around them. They're building businesses. They're giving back to the community. They're doing fundraisers and partnering up with the same SDPD that originally arrested them and why they ended up in my office. And then I don't gloat. It's not to rub their nose in it. It's to encourage prosecutors that the fight is worth it and to show them, look, by you doing that thing and not wanting to go back to your supervisor when I made you do it and then jumped over your head, this is the type of impact you could have had if you actually.
But they're like baseball pitchers, Jason. They have to have a win-loss record.
Mm-hmm.
They have to win 10 and lose 2 as opposed to winning 2 and losing 10. When you beat them 10 times out of 12, they win and they're happy. But the people that they prosecute, you know, and there's a lot of people who go to jail who don't belong in jail.
Yeah.
They may not be guilty or they may not need to be in jail. That's your job to win. So the DA, I'm not bashing DAs because they keep us safe, but their motivation is not the same as yours.
No.
You know, when you win, 2 people win, or maybe more than that. When they win, there's a perception that, well, the streets are safer. Not always.
No.
Not always.
No. There's only really a select type of crime where that's actually rings true, you know, but I think that's a topic for another day with those guys. But, you know, there are certain violent people that don't belong on the streets.
Oh, yeah,
There's
no doubt.
a lot of people
No doubt.
who charges are inflated, special allegations are thrown around for the purpose of stacking the hand to induce a deal and leveraging these enhancements in the amount of time.
But don't you get clients, though, who you know need to be on the street, who need to be free, who
Yep.
need to be on probation, if nothing else?
Absolutely. A large majority of my clients need that, and because going into custody is not going to serve to, one, rehabilitate them, it's going to do more collateral damage than good. It's not going to be any form of rehabilitative effort or specific deterrent. They're just going to end up reinforcing the negative outlooks they had going into the case, getting bad relationships, and learning more dirty tricks probably while being warehoused instead of continuing to build their life and be a productive member of society.
But then how do you take the DA on? I mean, because you know he's got one thought and one thought only is to put this person in custody.
Mm-hmm. Well, you do it the way I do it without giving away all the tricks is I look at the case from a legal standpoint first. I pick out factual issues and inconsistencies in the reports and holes in their case to make sure that they know that I've done my job and they're going to have to fight for it. And then I have a team of investigators that go out and we work up a mitigation packet and tell this person's story outside of this one criminal event, you know, and show the person and humanize them, because then you start building that rapport and there's something about this person or 2 things about my client that will be familiar, resonate, or connect with the DA, where they can see that common ground between, oh, me, Mr. Prosecutor, never did anything wrong, and you, bad person. Yeah, I have to bridge that gap and humanize my client to make it the DA, be receptive to seeing them as a human and giving them a chance as opposed to seeing them as a case number, a charge, and exposure. Right?
Can you ever get to the DA to the point where they say, "You're right, Jason. This doesn't need to be where we are, where we have it."
Yes. And
They do.
I've been. It's hard as hell to get there, and it's always an uphill battle because of they start out in one position, and a lot of times the fight's not seen through, or more often than not, it needs some form of sanction, right?
Because they have moral correctness. They believe that they're right going in.
Mm-hmm. And it's a lot. There's nothing more gratifying than when you're able to bridge that gap, and the prosecutor sees that your client's worth giving a chance to, that doesn't ruin his life forever or her life forever or necessitate a long custodial term, right?
That makes you feel like what I've gone through in life has been worth it.
Absolutely. And we can take somebody who's been cast out and seen as an unproductive member of society and give them a chance to rehabilitate and become a productive member of society, which will make the community, the streets, our society that we all care about in the criminal justice system better as a whole. And who knows how far that ripple will go from this client giving the story, perhaps telling the story about how they earned a break, and then that helps with the perception or misperception of cops. Not every cop's an asshole. Not every DA is a jerk. You know, there's a huge ripple.
But that's a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
How much longer can you do this?
As long as I can, I'm going to keep doing it just because I enjoy the fire and the fight that I have in me. The day that I come to work and I don't care, for sure that's the day I can't do it because my clients are too precious. You know, it's not corny to say, like, I have somebody's future, their life in my hands, their liberty in my hands when I'm fighting for that case. And if it's not client focused and it's just about the money, or I don't feel I have the strength or the energy or the piss and vinegar to go fight against the machine that's the federal government or the DA's office, I'm not the guy for that job.
What do you do then?
Well, I pivot. I podcast host full time, playing golf with Neal. We're doing some real estate development deals like we talked about, doing baseball clinics. You know, I'll find a way to use my skill set to continue with the same overlap that I have with the criminal defense practice, which is helping people solve problems, helping people in a tough spot, and impacting lives so that they're better.
Because they say that most criminal trial attorneys are alcoholics by 40. Now, I can't prove that. But it's tough.
Yeah.
Because when you lose one that you should have won, that's tough.
Oh, that's the toughest. Those are the scariest cases when you have a truly innocent client. Truly innocent client, and they just don't see it, they've misperceived it, and they're pressing forward as if they're guilty, and then you have a tremendous risk of trial in prison going over their head. That's the toughest case.
Yeah, it's tough. I as I said, I never wanted to be a lawyer. I always wanted to be a developer. But when I lose, that means somebody loses some money, or they lose a property, or they lose a deal. Mm-hmm. I can sleep with that because we'll do another one and we'll make the money again. My partner, I won't call which partner it was. He and I were partners, and I was a minority developer. And he came in the office one day and he said, "Neal, did I tell you that Hearthstone is not going to continue to fund us?" I said, "No, you didn't tell it." And that was the biggest money we had coming in. He said, "I didn't tell you that?" I said, "No, you didn't tell me that." He said, "Well, I'm sorry." I said, "Well, when are they going to stop?" And I thought he was going to say, "We got 6 months to close the deal." He said, "What's the day?" I said, "It's Wednesday." He said, "Friday." You know, we had a tough time, but nobody was locked up. Mm-hmm. Nobody's family was destroyed. I was pissed at him, but we stayed in business together. And if money's the thing you lose, and if money's the thing you care about, real estate development is not in it, because it's like 1927 recession. Don't jump out the window. Just go do some more deals. Mm-hmm. But in your case, you can't just say, "Well, I'll win the next one."
Yeah.
And so I feel sorry for you in that sense.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not for everybody. You know, it's not.
We'll do deals together. We'll do some real estate deals together.
Yeah, we'll do some. We'll build something.
Oh, you know, like I say, if you're in it for the money, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the joy of doing the deal.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I appreciate it, Neal. What's sort of three words of advice for young people listening to this that they could take away to sort of implement in their life right now to level up or improve their life?
I think the thing that we talked about a lot is your self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let somebody else assess you. You believe in yourself, no matter what beginning you had, no father, no mother. That has nothing to do with it. Now you're on your own. If you had a great father and a great mother, you're still on your own at some point in time. If you had nothing, you're still on your own. Then the other thing is, because of the time we're living in right now, don't get sidetracked on silly stuff. Don't get sidetracked on religion, politics, because some people really, they get hung up in it, can't even talk to them. Don't do that. You can do that on weekends and talk about Donald Trump and Joe Biden and blacks and whites and people like that and who you like and don't like. Don't get involved in that. And then after self-esteem and not getting sidetracked on silly things, recognize that you must succeed. You can't just sit in the apartment, hope for that government check to come in. You must succeed. And nobody's going to help you but you. And you'll never be in a position better than you are in this country right now where you can say, I will do what I need to do. Like your son's going to be the owner of a trash company. And I know we respect him. He'll be at the Chamber of Commerce, giving up money and things like that. He'll have 14 trucks out on the road doing business with the city. His dad's a big-time lawyer, but he has more money than his dad.
Probably.
You see what I mean? So that's the three things I would suggest. And, be a good, upstanding person. Your word is your bond. And in this town, if you're known as a liar, it'll go quickly.
Yeah.
And people say things like, well, your brand is important. Your brand is really important. And San Diego's a small town. It's large in numbers, but it's like Mayberry in a lot of ways. Everybody knows everybody. And if you're that asshole, you'll be that asshole.
Yeah.
That's the three things I could give. That's four, but that's the three things I give you. You can throw one out.
No, I appreciate it. They're going to get a bonus one today from you.
There you
go.
But
look, I truly appreciate your time sitting down, talking with me, sharing your knowledge and your story. And
we went all over the place. I didn't intend to do that, but we talked about everything.
Well, that's what happens with you, Neal. You're a dynamic individual. You're well-rounded. We didn't even talk about the Cowboy days.
Jason, we should have been talking about from the beginning.
Maybe we have a separate episode of just talking about Neal the Cowboy.
Well, the thing about it is I bang my head bad enough. So if we don't do it soon, I may not be in my right mind. My wife told me, she said, if you have a stroke or something like that, she said, I'll stay with you. She said, you get hurt messing with those horses again, I'm going to leave you. And she was dead serious because I've had some injuries. But, I was in law school and I had bleeding ulcers. And the doctor said, you're never going to live to be 40. And I said, well, I want to live to be 40. And somebody said, well, you ought to get into horses. And I thought, And I used to own the Rancho Bernardo Riding Club in Rancho Bernardo. It was 36 acres in Rancho Bernardo. And it was a business deal to me. And after I sold that, I said, well, these horses, that's not bad. And I got into horses pretty seriously. I still like that. I'm too old to be messing with them, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Nobody else in my family does, but
they'll get over it.
They will.
Well, I appreciate your time, Neal. Thanks for coming on.
I enjoyed talking to you, man. I forgot these cameras are even right there.
It's a good conversation.
Hope we didn't say anything too terrible.
No.
Okay.
They'll love it.